So, the other day I got stitched in a video based off of one of my videos over the Road to Housing Act. And I just wanted to go over it because this video is a great way to be able to show things not to do when trying to win an argument, and also, or a debate, and also show what happens when you don't actually have all of the information. Now, before we start this video, he does have slurred speech. I don't know where that comes from. I'm just asking that you guys do not attack his slurred speech as a meritless attack or insult, because I would not wish that on me, even though I do get that on me. And you will see it in here where he does give that on me too. So let's go ahead and check this out.
Executive Monkey say, we need...
So for some quick clarification, this was me breaking down Barney style as to why you don't hold a bill hostage that you championed yourself. Because Trump did champion Congress to go ahead and pass this bill.
This is the type of dude I don't want in the warm bathroom. I don't. Because I can see your 5 o'clock shadow on your fucking face. It'll explain to me.
So, in that clip, he starts off with the meritless claim. And yeah, what happens with meritless claims is sometimes you lose credibility, and other times it's, in all honesty, showing that you actually don't have a strong enough argument than you think you do. But regardless, it's just disrespectful to have meritless insults.
Why in the blue fuck you want got one eye looking at the camera and
I have no
another
idea what you're
eye
saying.
fucking off? And play that to me. Second, or the third, I should say. If what you're saying is true, bitch, I don't fucking believe anything you said is true because you don't know how to fucking read.
So in here, the first thing he says is he's not going to believe you because you don't know how to read. Once again, a meritless insult. But it gets worse as it goes on.
An immigrant, somebody that know two language, somebody that learn English as a second language, knows how to read better than your dumbass.
Once again, meritless claims. So, none of this is actually helping any argument that he actually wants to push. This is just to throw out insults for no other reason than just insult.
A lot of liberal people dumbass.
So this one really doesn't make sense because most liberals tend to be let me rephrase that. More college-educated people tend to be liberal. Regardless of that, just because somebody's liberal does not mean that that affects their intelligence rating.
Let's say it's true that he's holding sorority hostage. Isn't Democrat does the same thing with the government shutdown?
So I can see where his argument is going. And no, so this is not the same thing as during the government shutdown. Because just because one party has the majority does not mean that they can pressure the entire other side to go ahead and pass whatever that first party wants. In fact, after that bill was passed, there were Republicans who regretted putting or allowing that to pass. And he's referring to the one about the big beautiful bill.
Didn't they do that? Didn't they hold American hostage? Hostage.
So no, they did not hold Medicaid hostage. If anything, by doing the fast vote, it would have been saying that they're okay with the cuts that are going to Medicaid as well. And these cuts to Medicaid have actually cost lives because we wanted to make cuts to Medicaid to make cuts in other locations too and give more funding to other locations.
Because they didn't get away with what they wanted in the first place. I remember not too long ago, I didn't receive food stamp because Congress couldn't get their pennies off, and they cry like a fucking baby.
So the Democrats are not the ones that are the reason why people did not get their food stamps. That was literally the president. And it actually took a court order to make him give the fund or release the funding for the food stamps. So no, once again, that was not the Democrats. But you'll start to see more as this video goes on.
And throw a tantrum and shut down the government. I remember that.
So he does remember wrong. My assumption is he is remembering what the president wanted him to remember and what the Republican Party wants him to remember, which was that people went without funding because they could not pass a budget in total. However, for the majority of the bill, the Democrats were willing to actually pass those portions so that they could only focus on the things that they disagreed with. It was the Republican Party that refused to move on that.
It wasn't too long ago. So isn't it that Donald Trump using the same poison that you use on us? Isn't that weird?
So if he was using the same tactic, then it would be a situation where others, or it was like a party that agreed and another party didn't agree, and he was trying to negotiate. This is not one of those cases because this was a bipartisan bill that had an overwhelming majority of people vote for it. And instead, and he was the one that championed the bill. He was the one that tried to get the bill passed. So this would not be the same situation. This is a situation where he wants a bill to pass that was voted no on the Senate floor.
And let's talk about the Save Act. What exactly you have against the Save Act? I live in Louisiana, the South, next to Texas. The fucking big boot of United States. And some people say that the worst state could live on the most stupidest state in education to live on. But yeah, we are required to get an ID, and we vote with an ID. Explain that to me.
So, to explain why Louisiana gets or has to have a voter ID to be able to pass a vote, or to be able to vote, excuse me, is because that's their state laws. Because states have rights to set rules on voting. However, you're going to see where he messes up pretty soon.
We minority people, because I'm putting myself with black people, because over here majority of us are black, but compared to you, we are minority. If we are too stupid to get an ID, how do we vote in Louisiana?
So, this is one of those areas where Republicans want to push, saying that Democrats believe that people are too stupid to get an ID. But what's about to come next is going to explain a lot of why the SAVE Act should not actually be passed, but also why you should actually do your own research before you actually go and support a bill.
Isn't that interesting? And it's crazy that Obama is asking to get to have an ID to go to his library.
So, this is another form of propaganda right here. People are wanting to push to try to get an overwhelming support of the SAVE Act. They're trying to say that former President Barack Obama is requiring an ID to be able to get into his library. This is actually false. You do not need to get into the library. You don't have to have an ID for it. What you need to have an ID for getting in the library is if you're trying to get the Illinois discount. Everybody else, they don't need an ID. And if you don't want the Illinois discount, don't show them your ID. Or if you don't want to show them your ID, just don't take the Illinois discount. However, Republicans are trying to say that he requires ID to get in as a form of misinformation to push a narrative. And he just fell for it.
You already need an ID to buy alcohol. What can you use the same ID to vote?
So, 83% of people actually do agree with voter ID laws. So, I can see where he's getting in on this one. He is about to push the idea that because 83% of people agree with voter ID laws, then everybody should be for the SAVE Act. However, the SAVE Act has more requirements than just your basic driver's license.
Oh, now you want to change it to passport. I know a lot of people in Louisiana that doesn't even have a passport.
So at this point in time, this is when I started to realize he actually doesn't know what he's talking about. Now, granted, I could see where he was susceptible to propaganda before. However, now he's actually trying to push that Democrats are the ones that are wanting to require passports. Truth of the matter is they don't want to require passports, and the SAVE Act actually does not require a passport. If you don't have a passport, then you can use your social security number, your birth certificate. If you had a name change, you are going to have a court order or your marriage license to prove your name change. It's just a bunch of extra paperwork that's not really necessary when you already have to verify certification to get a voter registration.
So they don't get to vote because they don't have a passport, but they have an ID. Isn't that interesting?
Well, that would be interesting, except the fact that he's supporting the bill that would require all that extra paperwork or the passport. Now, I am actually in support of the idea of supplying anybody that wants a passport card for free as a form of compromise for the SAVE Act, because if they were provided a passport card for free, it's not a driver's license. It's like $35. However, currently, if you want the passport card, you have to get the book as well, and you shouldn't need to have to get the book if you're only going to be going to places like Mexico and Canada that take the passport card.
That interesting. See you fucking 5 o'clock shadow. If you wanna be a woman, wear makeup or something to hide your 5 o'clock shadow.
And then he goes ahead and ends it with an insult as well. So, throughout this video, yes, you did see a bunch of insults, which I call meritless, because they had nothing to do with the actual topic at hand. However, as you can see, he thought that you have to get an ID to get into former President Barack Obama's library, when you don't actually have to do that because he was susceptible to propaganda. And then, second, I don't know where he caught that narrative, because I haven't seen Republicans push it either. Perhaps it's that he just didn't read the bill or he didn't read it properly. But Democrats are not pushing for people to actually have to get a passport to be able to vote. But regardless on that, he's sitting there comparing me to a Democrat when I'm a libertarian, which is totally understandable. It is actually very common for people to assume if you're not Republican that you're Democrat, or if you're not Democrat then you're Republican. But in my case, that's not the case. But if you're going to take on an argument, do not be like that person. Well,
Executive Monkey say
Now, not
that person. Because they didn't do their research, they fell prey to propaganda. And as you can see, that's one of the dangerous parts of propaganda, is he's believing things that are way off or purposely meant to mislead the population. Because how many people are actually going to visit Obama's library unless they live in the local area or are taking a vacation? So chances are they're not going to actually verify that. So once again, I ask, please do not give that man a hard time over his slurred words. For all I know, he could have had a stroke and he hasn't been able to get his speech well. Or he could just have a speech impediment or just trouble talking. None of that actually matters. What matters is the information inside of it, where he was talking basically out his ass because he didn't know the facts that he was pushing out were false. And that's not going to help you win an argument. So, hope this was helpful. If not, I'm sorry for wasting 20 minutes of your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.